Hi, thanks for joining me for Bible study. We're in Matthew chapter 2, but I want to read some things from the Old Testament, from Isaiah, Isaiah chapter 11 and Isaiah chapter 60. And so if you want to flip over there or use your device, you can. Isaiah chapter 11, there's a lot of good stuff in that passage, but I want to highlight verse 6. Not verse 6, verse 10. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, who shall stand as a banner to the people. For the Gentiles shall seek him, and his resting place shall be glorious. Isaiah has already foretold of this root of Jesse, the rod that comes from the stem of Jesse, the branch that will arise from him. And it's ponderous. But then you read about stuff that we know is pointing to the Messiah. And not just a Messiah for the Israelites, but the Gentiles will seek him, he says. And his resting place shall be glorious. And a little later in Isaiah's prophecies, in chapter 60, I want to highlight a few verses there, verses 1 through 3. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and deep darkness the people. But the Lord will arise over you, and his glory will be seen upon you. The Gentiles shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. It reminds us of an earlier place where it talked about there would be darkness and a light would arise among Galilee. At this time, even the Gentiles shall come to your light. Even though there was a great darkness over the earth, the Lord is the light, and his glory. And the Gentiles will come. The kings will come. And that's when we then look a little farther down, and we see in verses 5 and 6, Then you shall see and become radiant, and your heart shall swell with joy, because the abundance of the sea shall be turned to you. The wealth of the Gentiles shall come to you. The multitude of camels shall cover your land, the dromedaries of Midian and Ephah. All those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and incense. They shall proclaim the praises of the Lord. And I bring these up because this kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? There is this light, and there is joy. Gentiles are coming from afar, coming from the land of camels. We see a few camels this time of year in nativity sets, don't we? And what are they bringing? Gold and incense. Proclaiming the praises of the Lord. And so this sets it up. There's something afoot. There is something going on. The Old Testament prophets pointed to this. I just gave you a solid sample there of Isaiah foretelling that when the Messiah comes, it's going to be big news. And it's not just going to be Israelites who come seeking him. So now we'll go to Matthew chapter 2. And with those words in our ears, let's listen to what Matthew tells us. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we've seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. Then Herod the king heard this, and he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search carefully for the young child, And when you found him, bring back word to me, that I may come and worship him also. And when they heard the king, they departed. And behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. So Matthew tells us that when Jesus was born in Bethlehem, there was a king in Jerusalem by the name of Herod. He is known in history as Herod the Great. But he was great at building projects, but there were some other things that weren't so great about Herod. He was brutal and cruel, incredibly suspicious, never secure in his power, always worried about who was coming to take it from him. And it was in his days that enemies of Rome came from the east. Wise men. Magi is what it says in the Greek. And that word is only used once in all the Old Testament. Well, it's used in one book, and that is Daniel. Daniel had a lot of experience with Magi when he was in Babylon and serving even the Persians. And we can't help but think that these guys knew of Daniel, and they knew something of what he had written, but not only that, something of not only what he had written, but what had been written before him and that he had access to himself, including Jeremiah and Isaiah. And so they say, we have seen his star in the east, and we've come to worship him. Where is the King of the Jews? Well, Herod thought he was the King of the Jews, and he would not appreciate someone else taking that claim. And for these guys to come from the east, from outside of the Roman Empire, to suggest that there's another king, that's scandalous and downright dangerous for everyone involved. So when it says that Herod was troubled, that's what they mean. When Herod was in a good mood, beautiful things were built. When Herod was in a bad mood, lives were lost. And all Jerusalem knew that. And so when he gathered the chief priests and scribes together, he's gathering the Sanhedrin, the leaders, some of whom he had put into place because he'd killed their predecessors. And he asked them, what is this about the Messiah? Now it's interesting. They came looking for kings of the Jews, but everybody knew they weren't looking for just any king. They were looking for the king, the Messiah. The Messiah's time had come. They knew from reading in Daniel, and they knew from the sign in the sky, the Messiah had been born. And everybody, including Gentiles, were anxious for the Messiah to come. And if he had been born, that's big news. And so they said to him, this is the Sanhedrin talking, this is the Jewish leaders in Bethlehem of Judea. It's been said in the prophet, and that's Micah the prophet. And if you want, we can flip over there to look at that real quick, because Micah is a contemporary. He is of the same time period as Isaiah was. But his book is a little later. It's between Jonah and Nahum, if you're in the minor prophets there. And his words there, but you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, though you are little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth are from of old, from everlasting. If you wonder what that means, literally it means from the days of eternity. That's a long time in the past. I don't think he's just a normal baby, do you? And so this is what they tell him. And so Herod, he says, And he asked the wise men, how long have you been seeing this sign? When do you think he was born? And so he's gathering evidence, and he says, go and search, find this child, and let me know where he is, so I may come and worship him. Do you believe him? No one else should have either. And so when they heard the king, they had their destination, and they leave Jerusalem. They thought they would find a king in Jerusalem, the capital, a palace. But alas, he wasn't to be found there. He's going to be in the suburbs, so to speak, a town outside, out in the countryside, a little town of Bethlehem. And when they started that direction, it's not very far. It's about 6 miles from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. And even in that short distance, they see their star again. They see the light. And they rejoice. They are so excited. Matthew has to pile on the emphasis there, that they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. That was a lot of joy. They knew they were getting close. And they come into a house. I think it's worth noting, Matthew doesn't say that it's an infant. He uses the word more for like a toddler. And he's not in a stable or in a manger. He's in a house. They've had some time to get established here in Bethlehem, or at least get some better living quarters. And then they come into the house. There's the child, and there's Mary, and they worship him. They worship him, and they give gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And this is where I want to pause and reflect. They came seeking him. They sought him with all their heart. Because God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. They sought him with their time. They sought him with their possessions. They sought him with their energy. Because they left home, they went a long ways, which took a long time, to go and find. But how were they going to find him? They didn't just find him by natural signs, did they? The missing piece was in the scriptures. And that's a lesson for us. What are we going to do this coming year to search for God, to seek him more and more? I hope it includes the scriptures, because that's how he is found according to this story. We find him. We can see his fingerprints all through creation. But to know him personally is to know him through his word. And when we find him, we find joy. In our relationship with him, we find a joy and a peace that passes understanding. And so our wise men are guides even for us, are they not? How will we go out of our way to go and seek God? This is how they did it. And when they found him, they worshiped. They gave of what they had, and they had brought much. They had brought of themselves. They had brought of their resources. Like I said, this was a long journey, a lot of time involved. And they gave all those things for God. And they were obedient. The Magi were known for their ability to read dreams. And they were divinely warned in a dream to go another way. Don't go back to Herod. And so they went to their own country another way. They just kept going the wrong way to go back to Babylonia or to Persia in order to loop around and not be found by Herod. Which then brings out another interesting point. Those people who were told that the Christ has been born, where is he to be found? In Bethlehem, they said. They knew the scriptures that much, but they didn't go seek him. It's one thing to know where to find him. It's another thing to go and find him. Because they were afraid. They were afraid it would change their lives. They didn't know what the Messiah was going to do. Besides, how could the Messiah help them? He's still a baby. And besides, Herod is going to kill anyone who goes looking for the Messiah. Maybe we're more comfortable with our heads on our shoulders rather than going and seeking this baby. But whatever their reasons were, they missed out on seeing the Messiah. I hope we don't put it off and miss out on meeting Jesus as these men did. But that's our story from the wise men. God sent them from the east to go find his son. He sent them from the east to tell the leadership among his people that his son had come. But only the Gentiles truly sought him. Because Matthew knows how this story continues. But one day, all will find him. From every kingdom, from every tribe, from every tongue, and every people. I pray we participate in that story so that all find out about the Jesus, the Savior, the Messiah, who has been born, who has lived, who has died, and who has rose again, who even now sits on the throne in heaven, and one day is coming again to make all things right, to make his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. God bless, God keep you. Thank you for joining me for Bible study.